Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Paint With Me. In case you're new, my name is Emily, or you can call me Em or Emmy. If this is your first video with me, I would like to call myself a creative more than an artist, but I do a lot of art-related videos as a way to kind of practice my art skills. Earlier, you could see that I have a photo reference pulled up, and that is just a way for me to practice my proportion skills. So seeing a reference and translating it onto paper, as I feel like it is one of my weaker points. The whole point of this video for me is just to fulfill my parents' request on making a painting for our house. So the canvas is rather large. We ended up going to Home Depot to get a piece of wood that would fit where we would like it to go on our wall. And this piece did take me at least 6 hours, probably much longer. I'm used to a smaller canvas as I can usually do those in about one sitting, and for this project it took me about a month and a half, but I also was not painting every single day, maybe about 3 to 4 hours a day, maybe just even 2 hours. So it's really hard to determine how long this even took me. Like, just this whole segment alone has just been me painting the background or just blocking in the colors so there's some foundation underneath before I go into the details. I have a terrible habit of wanting to work on details and never finishing up the background, so you're going to see a little bit later that I start to apply in some details here and there, and then there's like a whole section still not fully painted. But in my defense, it kind of works out because they're not related areas. So if there's anything that you can take away from this video, is block in your colors first before you start doing the details. Don't be like me and do that. It'll just slow down your process altogether, and definitely work in layers. It helps you a lot. But when you work on a big piece like this, I feel like just a little bit of a background is there because you're going to end up covering it anyways with the minute details as I'm learning layers. So like one layer, like just color, will help out a lot, so you know at least like what is supposed to be where. I mean, a sketch also helps, but you end up painting over that anyways. This shot is a very good example of me starting on the details, and you can still see some of the wood in the background where I didn't even bother continuing painting, but it's also like an area that isn't totally like related to the other, so I can start painting the details. So I'm just throwing on some shadow. I'm so sorry for the camera going out of focus in that clip, and I also don't know what happened to this clip here, but I do go more into it in a few seconds. But since I'm working with acrylic paint and it's not like oil paint, where oil paint, while it's still wet, it's easy to blend with the colors. So I have to work pretty quickly when it comes to blending out the colors and trying to make sure there's not too much of a weird, like, I guess, color separation, if you kind of know what I mean. So I do work a little bit in sections, but also trying to work quickly since I don't want my paint to dry out as I'm painting and I need these colors. So I do throw in some like kind of a caramely brown and some yellow, and that's kind of how I blend everything together. I rarely clean my brush in this process too, because I think it also helps with the blending process and to kind of get that like straw-ish effect. I don't really know what this roofing is, to be honest, but throwing on wet paint over wet paint and blending it out really helped a lot with getting this really nice texture, in my opinion. It's also probably my favorite part just because it looks so nice. here I'm giving a little bit of structure to the building, and I feel like the reason why I even started doing the details here and there, especially starting with the building first, is because you have a lot of greenery and a lot of trees and bushes that do kind of need to overlay the building so it gives a bit of dimension. There's a lot of blending involved with this piece since there's a lot of shading and dimension that you want to achieve with this overall piece, or just any realism piece that you're trying to do. Dimension is so important to make sure that things pop out and look realistic or 3D, and I feel like that's something I'm still trying to learn, especially through paint and color theory, since a lot of my best works that are related to shading and highlights are probably my black and white pieces that is through just pencil or even charcoal. I also don't draw every day, so I feel like that does fault me a little bit in my artistic skills. Like, I don't see anything wrong with using a photo reference or drawing stuff that you see in real life, because it is a good way to train your eye from reference to photo. But when you're trying to find your own artistic style, it's very hard to do so. Like, I'm not imaginative and I'm not someone who can create OCs and have my own style. Like, it's one of my goals as an artist to end up creating my own thing, but I feel like I just don't have enough knowledge to do that, and I feel like a lot of practice will help me along the way with doing it. But sometimes it's just like I'm lazy. I don't want to do it at all, but I know if I start putting in the work, it will help me in the long run, especially for my classes and just my art in general. The whole bottom half of the painting, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily feel rushed, but it definitely feels like I still don't really know what I'm doing, and it's not realistic. It's still very much like it's not below average, it's probably average, but still very better, so like above average. Did that make sense? That didn't really make sense in my head. In case you knew what I meant, I feel like I didn't know what I was doing at this stage at all. It isn't until I started getting into the top half with the trees and the sky. Like, I think my best skill is blending. I will blend my heart out until things are smoothly done. Like right here, you can tell that I'm doing a pretty good job blending everything out. As we time lapse through, it's probably one of the best areas that I've done with blending and shading. So it helps that I started out with the highlight / lighter colors and then pulled out with the darker colors underneath and just kind of worked in small sections. Like the paintbrush I was using probably wouldn't have been the best for the blending because it's kind of just one of those flat brushes. The whole like stippling movement that I was using really helped bring out that these are leaves. So it does a great job. From this angle, you can tell that I'm watching an episode of Well Till 9, and since this painting took so long, I think I went through about 3 episodes of Well Till 9, so it's been great. And here I am working on the little purpley section. I think these were still like leaves or bushes or like a part of the sky. Honestly, I don't know, but because there was purple and like some pink, it was my favorite section to work on, just because I kind of could do a little bit of a stylistic approach in this area. I like overestimated how much of the pink / blue purple I needed, and so I had to cover up that area with some blue. Since there's so much purple happening, it literally is just my favorite part to do. And the way I'm working this little section, and honestly trying to go around the chimneys or whatever those are, which has been so difficult, it's kind of working on a like back and forth from left to right to left motion to kind of get a, I don't know, I guess an interesting texture. Like it's still kind of a bushy tree area situation, instead of like blending out how I normally would, like for the tree on the left. This is kind of like a different approach. I don't really know how else to explain it because I'd be working purple, blue, back and forth, and ever so painting my brush in between. Again, I like to kind of mix my colors while it's on my brush and different, if that makes sense.
Like a storm, you're killing me, oh love, don't let me be, 'cause I don't really know what I want. It's so sweet, like a honeybee, and so deep, like a rooted tree, taking me so high up above. Oh, it's you.
This is a little bit of a weird transition because you guys didn't get to watch me paint the trunk and branches of the trees. So the white branches In the front, I just used a kind of decently sized paintbrush and then a thinner one to paint the branches, and they're just kind of like little like staggly lines. They're not too straight and they kind of branch off from one each other. That's kind of why they are branches, because it starts with one and then branches out into two, and those two branches out to maybe two or three, and that's kind of how you do basically trees. And I'm just filling in the tree leaves branches at the top that you can kind of see while I'm working on another tree. These ones are kind of just more tailored to the bottom of the tree, so it doesn't actually show all the way throughout, so it gives a bit of a fullness, which helps. The ones in the purple tree are just like branches that didn't finish, so there'd be a gap in between each one. I don't really know like how that shows these trees are like full in that sense, but I don't know, it's kind of an interesting look for those ones. And with these pink and purple trees, again, I work from lighter to darker, while in like charcoal you work from darker to lighter, but in this sense it kind of helps with the blending. But occasionally I will work with darker to lighter just to bring out some of the highlights in those trees. If you can't tell already, the bush over the pebbles, I was quite unhappy, and I actually did end up repainting it a little bit to kind of give it a little bit more a realistic approach. But because I didn't paint the pebbles, the green that I'm using doesn't entirely match with the bushes on top. But I'm kind of doing a little bit of a stippling effect again for these, like I did with the trees, just kind of like a up and down with a paintbrush instead of like a swoosh back and forth and up and down. And to give it a little bit of color so it's not so much green, I've worked with so much green. I used a tiny little brush and with a little bit of magenta threw in a little bit of dots for flowers, and that's kind of how I got that little section. I'm gonna say it right now, this section I was probably the most lazy. I was so unenthusiastic with doing this section, so I feel like I didn't do the greatest job on this flower bush at all. And I feel like if you compare this and the rest of my work, you can definitely tell that I tried and applied the stippling I did with the trees with this, but these flowers, I'm just not feeling it. And I feel like if you see the rest of the painting, you will agree.
Treat me like I'm less than, so tell all of your new friends how I am the
There is a little bridge that connects from that mainland to this other little mainland area, and I just used a flat brush and kind of worked carefully to get that straight edge, and then I freehand the rest of the bridge and threw in some shading, working with a dark black at the bottom and blending it with the brown that I used. And again, I did not feel like mixing colors, so that's kind of how I blended and mixed colors together and threw in some highlights there.
Tired of trying just for you to leave.
To get this like leaf blade-ish effect, I would take my brush from bottom to top, so it's kind of like a flicking motion, and worked pretty quickly so I would get that like feathery effect at the top of the edges, and then worked up in color scale, so darkest to lightest to bring out some of the shading. This is where my mistakes start to happen, and my mistakes usually start to happen towards the end of the painting. Like anything I do, I feel like it's always at the end. So I started painting in the fencing, but if you hadn't already noticed that little section right there, I had not painted in the background yet. So I stupidly enough did the fencing, then went back later with some green and some purple and here and there in between the lines, and then had to repaint the fencing again because like it's supposed to be faded and kind of far away, sort of. It's just blurred out. I don't know how else to explain it, but the fencing was not my strongest moment.
To say, but it's just that love is so hard, and sometimes I don't know who we are. So when you're getting mad in my car, I'm trying to act cool. Whoa, but something's so wrong, and it's been going on for too long. I'm trying to shut my mouth and be strong, but I just can't, babe. Oh no, 'cause I'm afraid. You got nothing left to say. Just to make out the car, I've tried, babe, but I can feel that something's changed. Love is something cool, but let's be real. This isn't love if I can't tell you how I feel. I can feel it, babe. I can feel it now.
As we're nearing the end of the video, please let me know if you've enjoyed it. It encourages me to continue doing art and also to continue this type a video. I've also tried to change up how these videos are recorded, so let me know, and also let me know if you've watched all the way through, because this is kind of a long video. But I did enjoy talking about just my art experience a little bit and just how I'm doing some of my art techniques. I wouldn't say I'm a great teacher for this, but explaining some things here and there has been a joy. And while we finish the video, I will go and I will see you in the next one. Okay, bye.
She's a Mona Lisa. Everyone's lining up to see her.